The first letter arrived on a Thursday, just before the rain. Ethan found it among the junk mail, an ivory envelope with elegant handwriting that made his chest tighten. His name was written in ink he knew too well, Lila's. For a moment he forgot the silence of her funeral, forgot February's ice, forgot everything except the shape of her letters. He opened it slowly, hands trembling. Ethan, love, you always hated Thursdays. You said they felt like bridges that forgot where they were going. If this finds you, I hope you're sitting down. Do you remember the rain the day we found the blue door? Her scent lingered faintly on the paper, orange peel and clean linen. His heart twisted. The blue door was their place, their secret. He could almost see her there, smiling in the rain. But she was gone. Gone for months. Yet this was new. He sat at the kitchen counter, surrounded by the stillness of his apartment, the kind of stillness that only grief could create. For weeks he had learned to live alone, counting the cracks in silence. Now this letter had cracked something else. He told himself it was a cruel prank. Maybe a friend found old notes, or some twisted stranger wanted to play God with his pain. Still, he couldn't stop reading. When Lila died in that car accident, part of him had frozen beside her. The sound of sirens, her cold fingers in his hands, the paramedic saying her name, all of it replayed in his dreams. He'd built walls to keep those memories from leaking into the daylight. But now her words came back like a ghost that refused to rest. He couldn't sleep that night. He placed the letter under his pillow, as if it might whisper more while he dreamed. The next morning, he went to the post office, written on the envelope, searching faces, hands, anything familiar. No one. Then on Sunday, another envelope slid under his door. He stared at it for a long time before opening it. Ethan, you once told me mercy is just a slower kind of truth. I'm asking you to do something for me. Go to the blue door. Today. Before the rain. I left something there that belongs to both of us. His throat tightened. The blue door. 20 minutes away. He told himself not to go. He went anyway. The streets were wet and quiet. The same bakery, the same lamppost, the same echoes of their laughter. When he turned into the alley, there it was, the old blue paint, chipped and tired. He knelt and saw a small tin at its base, one she'd once used for tea. Inside were Polaroids. Him laughing, her smiling, their life captured in tiny moments he'd forgotten. And one more envelope. I forgive you for the thing you never told me. The words hit harder than any goodbye. He stared at them, rain blurring his vision. What thing? He had secrets, yes, doubts he'd buried. The ring he hadn't given in time. The hesitation before she left that morning. His guilt had a heartbeat. Then, movement. A figure appeared at the mouth of the alley, a woman under an umbrella. When she turned, his blood ran cold. The face, her face. Lila's alive. He stepped forward, voice breaking. Lila? She flinched slightly. No, she said, her tone calm, careful, familiar in an impossible way. Myra. He froze. The same eyes, the same mouth, only darker, sharper, a mirror cracked by grief. She looked at the tin, at the door, then at him. You're Ethan, she said softly. He nodded, unable to speak. Then you've read her letters. He swallowed, heart pounding. Why are you doing this? The rain answered first, soft and endless. They stood under the rain, two strangers sharing one face and one ghost. Mira tilted her umbrella so it covered them both, and for a moment Ethan could almost believe that time had folded, that somehow Lila was back. But she wasn't. He stared, trying to find the differences. Lila's eyes had light in them. Myra's carried storms. Lila smiled before speaking. Mira waited until silence hurt. The resemblance was too perfect, too cruel. Walk with me, she said softly. They walked through the old quarter without speaking. The rain turned the streets silver. Every corner whispered memories. Laughter from a summer gone. The scent of bread from the bakery where he used to wait for Lila on Sundays. Myra chose a small cafe. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the smell of coffee and rain-soaked coats. She took off her scarf, revealing the same curve of jaw that had once rested against his shoulder. He looked away. The waiter came. "Earl Grey for me," she said. Her tone was calm, practiced. "Black coffee," Ethan murmured. They sat in silence until the cups arrived. The steam rose between them like something alive, breathing for the two who couldn't. "You're angry," she said finally. "You should be." Her voice was almost gentle. He met her eyes. "Tell me why." "The letters. Why send them?" "Because endings don't explain people," she said. "Stories do." She let the words settle before adding. "And because my sister loved you in a way I needed to understand." Ethan's hands tightened around the cup. "How did you even get her handwriting?" "Practice," she said quietly. "We were twins." "I knew her every curve, every line, every hesitation. I didn't have to forge her. I just remembered her." He shook his head slowly. "You played God with grief." "Maybe," she admitted. "But you wouldn't have opened them if they were from me." The truth hurt because it was real. He leaned forward. "What do you want from me?" She didn't answer right away. Outside, a car splashed through a puddle. The sound filled the space where her silence lived. "Finally," she said, "I want to know what you kept from her." The question hit deep. He looked away. "You don't get to ask that," he said. "You wrote in her voice. You made me believe she was alive. You don't get to be her now." Mira looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of her teacup. "Good," she whispered. "That anger, keep it. It means you still feel something." She looked up again. "But I still need to know. Because what you kept is why I'm here." Ethan's pulse quickened. Memories he had buried began to move again. He took a long breath. "I didn't betray her." "Not like that." "Then how?" she asked. "I was offered a job overseas," he said slowly. "I didn't tell her. I wanted to propose first, then share the news after. I thought waiting would make it easier. It didn't. The day I finally decided to tell her was the day she died." His voice cracked on the last word. Myra's eyes softened. "She would have gone with you, you know." He smiled sadly. "Maybe, or maybe she would have asked me to stay. And I think that scared me even more. Silence. Only rain against glass." Myra spoke again, barely above a whisper. "You think the letters were revenge?" "They weren't, at least not anymore." He looked at her carefully. "Then what were they?" She hesitated. "When I lost her, I didn't know what to do with my hands. So I wrote. I used her words, her memories. At first it was anger, then it became the only way I could hear her voice again." Ethan's chest tightened. He understood too well. She looked at him. "When I saw you at her funeral, you didn't cry. You stood there, still as a stone. I wanted to see if you could still break." He closed his eyes. The memory of that day, the flowers, the cold, hit him again like a second death. "I broke," he said softly. "Just quietly." Mira nodded, her own eyes glistening. "Then maybe you're the only one who really knew her." He leaned back, exhausted. "And what now?" Myra reached into her coat pocket and placed another envelope on the table. Smaller, lighter. "This is the last letter," she said. The last one written in her hand. "What comes next will have mine." He stared at it, afraid to touch it. "What does it say?" "Open it at the blue door," she whispered. "Tonight, alone." She stood, ready to leave, but paused at the door. "One more thing," she said without turning around. "The betrayal I came for isn't only about you." He looked up sharply. "Someone took something from both of us years ago. Someone dressed it as love. Tomorrow, I'll tell you who." And before he could speak, she was gone, leaving behind the scent of tea, rain, and the faint echo of forgiveness that wasn't ready to exist. Ethan sat there alone, staring at the envelope. The city outside moved on, unaware that his life had just changed again. And in the hollow of his chest, something whispered, not pain this time, but a beginning he didn't yet understand. The road to Lila's mother's house was quiet, lined with willows bent low as if guarding secrets. Ethan hadn't been there since the funeral, but the letter in his pocket gave him no choice. Find the one with the lighthouse, it said. So he went with the same mixture of dread and devotion that had followed him since Mira appeared. The house looked smaller than he remembered, its paint fading into the gray of October. He knocked once, softly. Lila's mother opened the door, her eyes swollen but kind. She didn't seem surprised to see him. "You're here for her things," she said simply, and turned away to let him in. Inside, time had stopped. The air smelled faintly of lavender and dust. On the table sat framed photographs, Layla and Mira as children, identical smiles and mismatched ribbons. The resemblance felt heavier now, unbearable even. "Her room is the same," the mother said, and left him standing at the foot of the stairs. He climbed slowly, each step a memory. The door creaked open to a room frozen mid-breath, books stacked, sketches pinned to the wall, the bed made with her favorite blue sheets. He knelt beside it, reached underneath, and his fingers brushed a box. Cardboard, wrapped in twine. Inside were postcards, dozens of them, sunsets, harbors, forests, all written in her hand. His throat tightened. He searched until he found the one with the lighthouse. On the back, just one line: "You can't love someone who hides the truth about your sister." He read it twice. The words felt like a slap and a confession at once. Mira. He sat on the floor, the box beside him, trying to understand. Lila had known something, or guessed it, before she died. The air in the room grew heavy. He closed the box, stood, and turned toward the window. Outside, the wind was lifting leaves into the air like restless spirits. When he left the house, the sun was already gone. He called Myra. No answer. He walked without direction until he found himself back near the blue door. She was waiting there, as if she had always known he would come. The rain hadn't started yet, but the clouds were trembling with it. "You found it," she said. Ethan nodded, holding up the postcard. "Tell me what this means." Mira looked at him with something close to exhaustion. "It means she knew about us," she whispered. The world stilled. "Us?" "We weren't supposed to meet again," she said, voice breaking. "But years ago, before you met Lila, we did. You don't remember, do you?" He frowned, searching the corridors of memory. A party, laughter, someone's balcony overlooking the sea. A girl with dark hair and eyes like storms. He remembered a night that had felt infinite and meaningless. He remembered leaving before dawn. He remembered never asking her name. "Myra!" His voice cracked. She nodded slowly. "I was the mistake you buried. The one-night memory you forgot. And when you met Lila, I watched her fall for you, not knowing. I tried to tell her once. She didn't believe me. Said I was jealous, said I was lying. She looked away. Maybe I was both." Ethan's chest hollowed. "You think that night was betrayal. But I didn't even—" "You didn't know," she finished. "I know. But she found the photo. The one you took. She knew before she died." Rain began to fall, soft but relentless. He stepped closer. "Why the letters then? Why drag me through her ghost?" "Because I needed to see if you'd still love her when she wasn't perfect," Myra said, tears mixing with rain. "And maybe to see if you could forgive me for not being her." He stood in front of her, too close, both shivering. The pain in her eyes mirrored his own. "I can't hate you," he whispered. "But I don't know how to love what's left." She smiled faintly, the kind that breaks more than it heals. "Then we're even." She turned, ready to leave, but he caught her hand. "Myra, wait." She looked back once, eyes full of ghosts. "If you want the truth," she said, "meet me tomorrow at the cliffs, by the lighthouse from the postcard. I'll tell you everything she couldn't." Then she walked away, her reflection flickering in puddles until the rain erased it completely. Ethan stayed by the blue door long after she was gone, the tin, the letter, and the postcard all pressed to his chest like relics of a love that had never learned to die. And somewhere, in the rhythm of the falling rain, he thought he heard Lila's voice, not accusing, not forgiving, just whispering his name as if asking him to finally choose between past and peace. The cliff smelled of salt and storm when Ethan arrived. The lighthouse stood above the sea like an old sentinel, its white paint fading into the gray horizon. The wind tore at his coat, but he didn't move. He had come before dawn, afraid that daylight might make him coward again. The ocean below crashed with the rhythm of a heart that refused to stop. Myra appeared through the mist, her hair pulled back, a red scarf around her neck. She looked smaller now, fragile against the immensity of the sea. "You came," she said, voice nearly lost to the wind. "I had to," he answered. "For her. For us." They stood side by side, watching the waves. "This was her favorite place," Myra said softly. "When we were children, she'd make me race her up here. She always won." Her smile trembled. "She said the world felt honest near the edge." Ethan nodded. "She used to bring me here too. The night before she died, she said she wanted to see the sea one more time." He paused, the memory pulling at him. "I thought she meant someday." Myra looked at him then, eyes dark as the storm. "She came here alone that morning, before the accident. I followed her." Ethan turned sharply, confusion cutting through the fog. "What do you mean?" "She was crying," Myra continued. "She told me she'd found the photo, the one of you and me. She said she couldn't marry a lie. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. She drove off before I could stop her." Her voice broke, the words dragged by guilt. "It was raining. The roads were slick. She wasn't watching the turn." Ethan felt the ground tilt under him. "You're saying—" "She wasn't just driving. She was running." Myra nodded, tears streaking her face. "I don't know if she wanted to die, Ethan. I only know she couldn't bear believing that both of us had betrayed her." He stepped back, hands trembling. "All this time I blamed myself. For hesitation. For silence. But you carried this?" "Yes," she whispered. "Every day." They stood there, two survivors of the same wound. The wind screamed around them, the waves crashing harder, as if the sea wanted to drown their words. Ethan looked at her, and for the first time, he saw the weight she carried. Not cruelty, but unbearable remorse. "What do you want from me, Myra?" he asked finally. "Forgiveness," she said simply. "Not for the letters, not for the lies. For being the reason she drove away." He took a long breath, closed his eyes. The sound of the ocean filled the silence between them. "If I forgive you," he said slowly, "does that bring her back?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "But maybe it lets her rest." He turned toward the lighthouse, its light sweeping the fog. "She wanted peace," he murmured. "Maybe that's the only thing we can still give her." Myra stepped closer, close enough that he could see the fear in her eyes, the reflection of the waves moving through them. "Do you hate me?" she asked. He hesitated. "I did, for a moment. But I think I hate time more for what it never gave us." She let out a breath that sounded like a sob disguised as relief. "Then maybe we both survived for a reason." He reached into his coat and pulled out the last letter she had given him. "She said she forgave me for the thing I never told her," he said. "Maybe she forgave you too, for what you couldn't stop." Myra looked at the letter, then at him. "If there's forgiveness," she said quietly, "it starts here." They stood at the edge together, the sea below roaring like an old prayer. Myra took his hand. It wasn't love, not yet, maybe not ever. But it was something gentler, something human. A bridge between guilt and grace. The first light of morning broke through the fog, touching their faces with gold. Ethan looked up at the lighthouse, the same one from the postcard, and for the first time since her death, he didn't feel haunted. He felt watched over. Myra squeezed his hand once before letting go. "Goodbye, Ethan," she said. "Or maybe, see you again." She turned and walked back toward the road, her red scarf bright against the gray. Ethan stayed a little longer, eyes on the horizon. The wind carried her name, Lila, into the waves and back again. He whispered, "You can rest now." When he finally left, the storm had passed, and the sea looked calm, as if love and loss had finally learned how to share the same sky. The days after the lighthouse felt different, quieter but not empty. Ethan moved through his apartment like someone learning to breathe again. The air no longer carried the ache of absence. It carried memory instead, softer, livable. The letters were kept in a wooden box on his desk now, beside the Polaroids. He still read them sometimes, not for answers, but to remind himself that love can survive even when people don't. A week later, a small envelope arrived without a return address. The handwriting wasn't Lila's this time. It was Myra's, sharper, steadier. Inside was a single page. Ethan, I'm leaving for the coast. Maybe I'll stay, maybe I won't. I don't expect you to follow. But I wanted to thank you for listening, for not turning away from the truth when it hurt most. Lila would have wanted that. We can't fix what broke, but we can stop it from breaking us again. Myra. He folded the letter and slipped it into the same box as the others. Then he went outside, into the late autumn sun. The city looked different, lighter somehow. He found himself walking without direction, ending up by the old quarter again. The blue door was still there, its paint peeling a little more with every rain, but he no longer feared it. He touched the wood gently and smiled. "Thank you," he whispered. As he turned to leave, he noticed something new. A small bouquet of wildflowers resting at the base of the door. No note, just color against blue. Myra had been there. He felt it, the quiet promise of shared grief turned into something almost like peace. That night, he dreamed of both sisters. Lila stood by the sea, her dress moving with the wind, smiling the way she used to when she caught him sketching her face. Mira stood beside her, silent but no longer shadowed. When Lila looked at him, there was no accusation, only forgiveness. He reached out, but the dream dissolved into light before he could touch her. When he woke, the sunrise spilled across the room like gold spilling from a wound finally healed. He opened the window, let the morning in, and for the first time in months, the world didn't feel haunted. It felt alive. He whispered her name one last time, not as a prayer, but as a memory set free. And somewhere beyond the horizon, between waves and wind, he imagined Lila smiling, not waiting, not watching, just at peace. The letters had begun as ghosts, but they ended as grace. And Ethan finally understood. Some love stories don't end in reunion. They end in forgiveness, and that, too, is a kind of forever.